It's such a nice state to be in, as you can just let this file play again.
And roll. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, kind of cool that I got a chance to connect with you. You know, it's given me an opportunity too to kind of go back through some of my music and all that, and kind of rediscover Figures on a Beach. And then of course being able to check out the wiki, although I don't always believe everything I read on wiki anyway.
And you shouldn't. It's woefully inadequate, and it doesn't get, that garden doesn't get tended with the love it probably deserves.
No, and it's written by eight. What was that?
I'd like to redress some of that at some point and kind of, you know, up our game a little bit.
Not only that, but 8-year-old girls that have never even heard of the bands that they're writing about are the ones that are the authors on that. So
yeah.
FIREKING. I love the name of the band.
Yeah, and you know, it's not a safe company or anything. It's definitely from the dishware and everything that I have kind of a lot of, but always struck my fancy, you know. Cool
line. Totally cool line.
Absolutely. Very working class too.
Oh my gosh.
They used to give those, like in the Midwest, every home had it.
Really?
Yeah. They're, you know, like I said, it's late. My history thing is going to be inaccurate, but I seem to recall those being given away. You know, like you go to the bank and get a, you know, open an account with us. We'll give you a set of FIREKING plates, you know, like kind of like that. I don't know that that's the realm I'm talking about.
Right, but kind of the same idea though. Well, actually, and if I remember right, McDonald's, back in the 70s or 80s, actually did at least one of their product lines through FIREKING. And I worked for Goodwill for about 3.5 years here recently, and ran the glass department.
Oh my God, you must have seen tons of it.
Oh my gosh, not as much as you would think, but boy, I'll tell you though, when FIREKING came through, it was one of those things that we definitely hold aside and like usually put like in a kind of more exclusive place. But incredible line though. So that was obviously the first thing that came to my mind, and I guess I was right.
You're 100% right. And we have a nice, a decent Bandcamp page with everything on it that you can listen to. So it's just, you know, Bandcamp, enter in FIREKING, one word. Spotify is horrible. They have us as 2 words. Good luck.
Oh, really?
You know, FIREKING. Yeah, that's how we're in there. But we're in there.
Well, and I think that I found you there because I did find Today on Bandcamp. Okay, cool. Now, is there any other material out there that I should be aware of floating around?
A double album further in the discography from like 5 years ago called Double Trouble. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome.
It's 22 songs, and we did a vinyl release and a CD release, and you know, it's all done at home. You know,
wow.
Did not enlist a label or anything to do it, but I'm proud of it.
But you know, it doesn't have to be on a major label though.
Or even no, not now.
These days, no. It's so DIY anymore.
Yeah. It was refreshing to be the only person to answer to.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yep.
Like, didn't have to cut corners or compromise anything, and it's a different beast. FIREKING is a different beast than Figures. The only common thing is I'm singing, but I switched over to guitar in the last few years. I mean, I still play keyboards, but guitar is more a primary instrument now, and those songs are kind of loud guitar songs.
Very cool. Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up because there's a very noticeable difference between Figures on a Beach and FIREKING. FIREKING, I think, is a more straight-on rock and roll kind of sound. Yeah. Whereas obviously Figures was more, you know, dancey, kind of cutting-edge new wave. Wow, I don't believe I'm actually talking to you. This is very cool. So to kind of catch listeners up to speed, Figures on a Beach, I think the majority of us, at least down here in the States, were probably introduced to you guys more than likely through the Sire Just Say series.
Yeah, that was a good, and the first one, Just Say Yes, had the song called No Stars.
No Stars, right.
Kind of got us signed to Sire. We had some indie records in Detroit that made a little bit of noise before that, but we sent a demo out, and there's an actual story. too. We sent the demo out, blah, blah, blah. And this is like September 1986, and we were playing the Rat in Boston.
Okay.
The kind of notorious CBGBs of Boston. And I get a phone call, like somebody like says, there's a phone call for you, meaning me. I'm like, during sound check. It's like, who does that? And the person on the other end goes, welcome, this is Seymour Stein, welcome to Sire Records. And that's how he did it, very dramatically, you know.
Wow.
Then they whisked us off to New York the next day, and we were told, like, cut this song immediately, and we didn't use any of it except for the piano solo.
Really?
So yeah, so we wound up going to London to record an album, like kind of like that.
Almost overnight.
Yeah, but we've been like pushing hard for 5 years.
Right.
You know.
So, but now that was Figures on a Beat, so that wasn't Razor 1922.
No, Razor 1922 is very important though, and someday, because everybody like puts their archival stuff out, I really want to clean some things up and actually get something into the world. Razor was a little ahead of its time in Detroit, especially, where everything was pretty guitar driven.
Okay.
Great band, but everything was pretty guitar driven, with some exceptions, and we were one of them. So we had, 2 keyboard players. I played bass with my left hand, like, Ray Manzarek or whatever,
Okay.
A very good drummer, Mick Flores, and Rick Rolski, who later was the guitar player in Figures. That's the common thread there. But we were pretty aggressively avant-garde.
I was going to ask what the genre was. Okay.
Yeah, and definitely, I'm mentioning I'm listening to Philip Glass, but we would incorporate things like that into the music that informed us. I'm not saying we played like that, but that minimalist thing. Also, the pure wonder and noise of like early Eno and in Roxy Music, the non-musician. We had a fellow named Paul Schwacko who was very creative, and he had this little homemade synthesizer, one of these Paya kit synthesizers that you build, and like the patch bass, he would hold them together with nails, and the thing was never in tune. It was every show was an adventure, And at first we would get a lot of shrugs, and then all of a sudden people started showing up like, you guys are doing something different. So right at the height of us building an audience, which was like December 1980, factions within the band were like, nah, screw this, we need to just start all over again. And thus was born Figures on a Beach. Same band, different name. And we kind of, I didn't understand it at the time, but it made sense in the long run. And we added another non-musician keyboard player. So we were 3 keyboard players, guitar, drums, and various singers. And the factions within that band, there was me and Rick, who I think were more song-driven, and the others who were sort of more improvisationally driven. And we could do that, but we found it hard to coexist musically after a while. So we split the band in 2. And Paul and Mick went on to form kind of a cool band called His Body in Detroit. I don't know what's going on with them now. I do believe they're both living in Los Angeles. Okay. Super creative people. And then Rick and I were standing in a parking lot in East Lansing, Michigan after a gig in May of 1981 going, all right, half the band just left. What do we do? And I basically said, we're just going to keep going. And so we recruited Chris Ewan, who was the other keyboard player, that I love and know to this day. I still work with him musically. Awesome. And Rick Rolski from Razor. And then, then we recruited Chris Ewan, and then we recruited Michael Smith, who was in a band called L7 at the time, which had Larissa Starlchuk, who later on went on to be in the Laughing Hyenas.
L7.
Not the Let's Pretend We're Dead L7.
Much
earlier. But and I don't know where this is, but they were a force to be reckoned with at the time, and I'm pretty sure Third Man is doing some kind of archival thing on them, Detroit. So that was that. So we got Michael wanted to join us, so then we had a band. Boom, 4 of us, and
So how many people, and excuse me for interrupting, but Figures on a Beach, was that 4 or 5 of you guys?
It wound up being 5.
Ended up being 5. Okay.
Yeah, the original band was 4. So it was still me playing a Farfisa organ and a string synth, and Chris Ewan on other, like a, Roland Jupiter 4 and an Art Odyssey and all these very cool analog synths. And I'll go into what I think happened with synthesized music, and it's not a novel thought, but at the time we sounded different from every other band that did synth music because we had different weird equipment that would do weird things, and you could personalize it, and so did every other interesting band that used synthesizers at the time. Plus we wove guitar in, we were super textural, and at any rate we wound up getting quite a fan base. And then our early shows were kind of interesting in the fact that we opened for Orchestra Maneuvers in the Dark on like our 3rd show.
Really?
Like
your
Echo
3rd
and the
show, and you opened for
Echo
OMB.
Echo and the Bunnymen with their first tour over and over and over again. And then we even wound up opening for X on like 4 dates, which went better than you might think.
Accent?
X.
Oh, X.
Yeah.
I thought you said accent. Okay.
No.
X, really?
Yeah. Wow. So at any rate, we could hold our own with these bands at the time, and that's a great way to build a loyal fan base. And then they opened St. Andrew's Hall, which is still going, and for a little period of time that was like our domain. We'd do a Saturday night every so often, and that place would be packed.
Really?
Yeah, and then we had a couple EPs in Detroit that did really well.
Okay.
A song called Swimming and a song called Breathless that got produced by Don Was, actually, before he was, the president of Blue Note. It's amazing,
Right. I just heard Breathless for the first time within the last couple of weeks. And great track.
Thanks. That was a little bit of that got us into play Danceteria in New York.
Wow.
That was a little bit of a club hit. So things were looking good for us. And then, without getting too long-winded about it, we sort of hit a wall in Detroit, and we had ambitions. We were, wanting to make more records and reach a broader audience. Not broader, bigger, more people.
Right.
And maybe had stars in our eyes a little bit, at the time. But we moved to Boston under some duress. But none of us had really been here before either. We moved into like the garage rock capital of America at the time as a synth band, which was a little tough, And
what year did you move there? Was that 85?
85.
Okay.
So, but we were signed to Sire within a year of it. We were in London. We did a couple albums for them.
Wow.
It was an interesting experience. It wasn't always the greatest thing, as a lot of major label stuff is, but I wouldn't trade the experience, honestly. And there you go. We got 2 major
awesome.
records and a handful of EPs, and some people are still interested in the band, so we did something right.
Yeah, you did. Well, and there again, and like you and I were talking a little bit ago about Wiki, you can't totally believe everything you read, but really though, it's amazing the impact and the mark that you guys made for only being together as a band for such a really relatively short period of time. Yeah, it went fast for us in Detroit in particular. And we started a little differently. We went without having played a gig. Our then manager Sterling, who's kind of a legendary figure around Detroit, he knows everybody, but he and I and the band, one time we went to Toronto just to get a gig. We weren't there to play. We were there to say hi to people. Here's our tape. We went to Chicago. So we got gigs. And when that filters back to people in Detroit, whoa, Figures on a Beach is playing in Chicago. It's good. It builds a little mystique. It does. It does. Yeah. It does. So, and we would do events in the early days too, which I really liked. We played in the window of an art gallery on Grand Boulevard and Grand River in Detroit. Really? Installation behind us, and we played, and also this place became famous later on for the White Stripes, the Gold Dollar Show Bar.
During the tape, Reagan's face seems to fall apart.
we played there first. we did shows in there in '81. It was a drag bar, and it was a really interesting drag bar in what was a really sketchy part of Detroit then.
In '81, I'll bet.
In '81, and I remember that Sterling took me there, and I was like enthralled. I thought this place is great. It looks like it should be a club, and it's just got a vibe to it, you know. It had an MC. It was like straight out of David Lynch. It really was.
Wow.
And so we decided we're going to put a show on, and we had drag queens and a woman who like swallowed swords, and fire danced, and all this stuff, named Miss Misty Knight, while we played Trans Europe Express in the background. It was awesome. It was awesome. So we were good in the early days at creating a sense of event around the band. Like, you know, like, this is a fun place to be. This is a good place to be. This is a smart place to be.
Wow. How cool. Well, you said it a minute ago too. You know, it's like the memories that this created for you.
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact, even alone, that you were signed by Sire. You know, that's pretty big stuff. But the fact, though, too, you know, that you opened for OMD on your third outing, basically.
With that new lineup, it was like quick.
Yeah, that really says something. Well, and I was noticing. I think more people see now. I can't help but think, when I think of Figures on a Beach, I think obviously Accidentally 4th Street.
Yeah.
You know, because Gloria had such a catchy hook to it, you know. And I remember I was working at a gift store in downtown Olympia the first time that I heard you guys, and that was one of the discs that was playing in the sound system. And I remember, I mean, I can still visualize it, you know, walking around the store, and you know, and Gloria comes on, and you know, you find yourself singing and everything. But then beyond that, though, then I started doing a little bit more research on you guys. And as the Just Say series was still happening, well, No Stars was the first one, right? You said?
Yeah, that's from Standing on Ceremony.
And that was Just Say Yes. Now, when they put out Just Say Yo, I don't think you guys were on that one, but by Just Say Mao?
That's the one.
Okay, that was the other one. Was
and that's the second album, which is confusingly self-titled. So the first Sire album is called Standing on Ceremony. The second album is called Figures on a Beach. That's
okay. You kind of went against the grain on a lot of things anyway. So that
yeah.
But the reason why I brought that up, though, is because it shows that on the U.S. modern rock charts, Accidentally 4th Street actually made it to a number 14 position.
Yeah.
Okay, but you ain't seen that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we toured on that record.
We
were actually able to do like a club tour. That was some places we went, unbelievable. Some places we went, nobody knew who we were. So it was you know, and that could happen, like, you know, one night you have this amazing gig, and the next night it's like, well, okay.
Right. And 89, well, too, because that's that period kind of leaving out of the 80s, the whole like synth decadent feel going.
That gets me to what I think is maybe a problem with. I like the material on those records, but what makes some 80s records date to the extent that they sound dated is sort of the homogenization of what synths got used. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden there was this big, easy, high-tech thing. Stuff was much more digital, much more controllable than like what we originally cut our identity on. So, you know, everybody has it. You can tell Yamaha DX7 instantaneously, and it puts a timestamp on the record. So that's a regret. In using keyboards now, I try to really stay away from that and either use like sounds that are, you know, it's a piano, or it's such a treated sound that you can't tell what produced it, which is eminently more fun. And that's what Chris does too.
Okay.
Chris Ewan, who also records as Future Bible Heroes.
Yeah.
With Stephen Merritt from the Magnetic Fields. Okay. And so a few years ago, 2013, Stephen was having a hearing issue, and I subbed for him on a Future Bible Heroes tour. We played in Portland and we played in Seattle. We played why am I blanking on the room? The
It's such a
tractor.
nice state to be in.
Oh,
The tractor.
okay.
As you can
The
just
tractor.
let this fire play again.
A blonder, thinner me, but it's definitely me. At any rate, but at that time, Michael found a gentleman named Perry Tell, a little younger fellow, and he joined the band in '84, and he brought a lot to the table. He could play guitar, he could play bass. He changed a lot of the dynamic of the band because we weren't locked into a strict format.
Right.
So he would either do my parts, or later on, we sequenced my parts. So there was a lot of pre-sequence stuff going on live towards the end,
Okay.
there was a lot of live playing too, and obviously I sang everything.
Right.
But there was something a little lost, I thought, doing it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were we were cutting the second record, and we did it at Synchro Sound, which was the Cars. I think they'd given it up by then. The Cars studio on Newbury Street in Boston. So we stayed home this time.
Wow.
The first time we went to Trident in London, which was like, are you kidding me? This is where Ziggy Stardust was done. It's
Right.
like nuts, right? And in fact, it was a great environment to be in. So Alan Mulder was our engineer. He went on to work with Curve and a whole bunch. He's still out there. Super
Okay.
sweet guy.
Okay.
Really liked him. And I was deep into Smith's worship at the time. And I would get every single and every 12-inch faithfully, And he says, we just cut a track with them. This is like the day we come to go in the studio. We just cut a track with them. It's Shoplifters of the World Unite. And I go, how is it? And he played it. I got to hear it before it came out. I bought the single in London the day it came out. This was important. And then it turns out Morrissey's a complete prat. But anyway. So
That's what I heard.
It's still maximum love for Johnny Marr. But what stuck with me is, like, I remember Alan Mulder going, I go, what do you think of the song? He goes, the cymbals are a little sizzly. And I went back and listened to it again. I thought it was just great, right? And I went back and listened to it like 30 years later, and I went, he's right. The cymbals are a little uncomfortable orally. It's funny,
Little sizzly.
Yeah, a little sizzly.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
It's funny. You just nitpick in the studio all day long. I love that. I love working in the studio.
As a musician, to be able to go into some of these studios that are infamous for the other artists that have been in there, that had to have been a really cool.
It's really, places you play have significance. Oddly enough, the Magnetic Fields did a show 3 years ago at the Apollo Theater.
Really?
In my dressing room is a picture of Little Willie John, who's from Detroit, and an idol. And it's just like, how did I get here?
Wow.
It's cool. I have a lot of, I don't take any of that for granted.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And any chance that have you ever written a book or anything, or you think you'll ever go that route, or?
I have been told I have writing ability, and I never do anything with it.
Really?
So maybe I should. It would be certainly a story that's a familiar story, but told from a different angle.
Right.
And
right.
everybody's life is different.
Oh yeah.
And without getting too I've had an interesting run. Some good, some really bad, but it's life, right? That's
it is.
We're all the sum total of our experiences. So
yeah, it is. Hey, I probably should do a station ID here. That might not be a bad idea, so people know who I'm talking to. That wouldn't be
of course.
Hey guys, you are watching the Groove Zone Neo Retro FM out of Olympia, Washington. This is DJ D Phoenix, and I'm hanging today with Anthony of Figures on a Beach. And oh my gosh, totally cool. It's weird because as we're talking, it's between the places that you mentioned and the artists that you mentioned, it's like we're almost more like friends that haven't seen each other in a while because so much of this is just familiar.
It's a shared language, right?
Exactly.
If you were around the periphery of any of that,
yeah,
it's instant. It's like it's Proustian. It's like a sense memory,
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't go away.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And what's funny, in my later years, I sort of drifted around after Figures for a little while and kind of had Fire King as a weekend bowling thing. You know, it's like not really going for it. You know, that's why I pointed you to Double Trouble, because that's a fully committed record by Fire King. And around, I don't know, 2010, my dad died, and I was like, you know, that's one of those life things, and you look and go, what am I doing with my life? At that point, I was 51 then, and I says, I'm not playing enough music. And so I started playing music, and before the pandemic hit, I was sometimes in as many as 7 or 8 bands at a time here.
Wow.
In Boston. And what the cool part of that is the people who are in my age group, or roughly thus, who are still playing, are all part of that first wave that came out of punk rock in Boston in the 70s, early 80s, like the Mission of Burma people, Eric Martin from the Needs, Richie Parsons from Unnatural Acts. It's like, and I got to be friendly with them and play music with them in a way that, when you're young and competitive and not part of the exact same scene, it doesn't mesh the same way. Right. So it's really cool. I got to know a tremendous amount of people, and there's great talent here. And so, for want of a better word, there was a pretty good, like, you know, elder statesperson kind of scene here. Right. Like, where you could go see really good music like 7 nights a week. So I'm hoping that things are opening up. I'm getting some gigs again. Good. Maybe that will restore, you know. Well, I think that's what we're hoping. This has been, I keep reading stories on it and stuff. I mean, I've been on radio for the last 3 going on 4 years now, I think. And I've had a chance to interview a number of artists across the field. And when COVID hit, obviously none of us saw this coming. Nobody could have said, you know, not only how long we're going to be locked down, but, you know, exactly what's going to come of it. So the fact that venues are opening up, pretty darn cool. I'm starting to feel a little bit like a rock and roll widow, though. All my bands that are featured on the station are starting to get out there and play again, and they're all hitting the road and all that. And I'm like, bye, don't forget me. Right. Don't forget the guy that played your music. But it's good to see the venues opening back up, because I don't think any of us really had any clue how long they were going to be closed. No, I know. And also it's funny, because the very last thing that I rehearsed for, a gig that didn't happen because of COVID, was round 2 of what we were calling a post-punk night, where 3 different band leaders put together super groups, and we picked like 10, 12 songs. We did one in November of 2018. The cool thing about it was me, Rick Gralski from Figures, Chris Ewan from Figures. That's the first time the 3 of us had been on a stage. The current bass player in Fire King, John Sheeran, and a great drummer named Nathan Logus, who's played with the Weisternauts and John Pahida International Airport, and a cool band, Baby Ray. And we did cool stuff. We did not everything was like an obvious, like, post-punk hit, but like, we did The Light Pours Out of Me by Magazine, and, you know, opened with Fun Time by Iggy. Why wouldn't you? You know, cool. And it was cathartic. Like, we played I Found That Essence Rare by Gang of Four. It was cathartic to do those songs, and we actually did them really well. It was funny. It's like we put the people together, and it's like, wow. I remember we played as a band. We sound like a band. We didn't sound like a thrown together for the night kind of thing. It's like it had a real identity. And so that's not, to me, it's like active nostalgia to do one-offs like that. It's fun. We're not wallowing in anything. You heard that once, it's gone. So we were doing another one. And the material was even a little further afield. Like, we were doing The Affectionate Punch by the Associates and everything, which is a little hard for me to sing, but I'm going to do my best. Oh, yeah. So that's back on sometime in January. So we'll be re-rehearsing. But that was the last full band rehearsal I had before. Wow. And then Shirley Simpson of Magnetic Fields is going to join us on this one, too. How cool. Great singer. So then once all the restrictions or whatever lift, then you'll be hitting the road again, it sounds like. I don't know about the road. Well, maybe not hit the road. But I was playing locally, and there was some forays to New York and Detroit and elsewhere, pretty routinely though, and like a couple times a week. So I have done one full band gig in June with another band that I'm in that I produced a record for, and then joined the band called Trusty Sidekick.
Okay.
I really love Trusty Sidekick as a anarchic creation of a gentleman named Tim Carey. There's a pretty great album called The Friends of Trusty Sidekick.
Okay.
Again, self-generated. And it's funny because that was early on, and we were just like, I stumbled in to hear them a couple times, and I was like, unfocused, but there's something like so compelling about Tim Carey and these songs and the way they kind of lope around. And then I guess my contribution to that was using my arranger editor thing and helping craft them into songs. So, but the versions that are recorded there are very much like snapshots of a band forming and becoming a band. And now when we play them, they're like, they have a different lift off to them. But it was kind of amazing. We played this place that we play a lot in Jamaica playing called the Midway Cafe, and it was a Thursday night, and I honestly wasn't expecting nobody to show. We had a great crowd, and people are just so ready to participate in life again. It was cathartic. And I went in with like zero expectation,
Which is probably good, and that's probably the reason why it might have turned out that way.
Yeah, right? Get a little more zen approach to things.
Well, I think that's it. Okay, so if you were to look at something maybe positive that'll come out of all this, is it maybe a new sense of appreciation on behalf of the fans for the artist? Not saying that it hasn't always existed, but I think having it taken away from everybody for this long really...
You don't know what you have till it's gone, right?
Exactly. So, to kind of hit on that, how have you done through the whole COVID thing so far? I mean, like between the time when it first started just over a year ago to today, where were you at when it came down?
I'm sorry? Where was I?
Where were you at when it came down?
I was in Boston.
You were, okay.
And I've been working through the entire thing.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm the assistant manager of a cannabis dispensary.
Well, there you go.
Right. And
Nice.
So we're front facing. We were a medical facility. We stayed open through the whole thing, masked up all day. We're still doing that. So, that went from terror to accept it, whatever those 7 stages of,
Denial and all that, right.
Like everybody, I lost some people, and know some people who got really, really, really sick, and it would have been a horrible thing to lose them, and we lost some people too. So just very tough. It's like the world lifted out from underneath everybody.
Yeah
All at once. Everybody all at once. You know?
And I think that I think for some people that made it easier to deal with, because you, even no matter what was going on in your mind, you knew that somewhere on the other side of the world, somebody else was dealing with the exact same emotions and feelings.
Yeah. It's helpful to a point, except that, I don't want to get on a screed. The virus affected people differently based on their income bracket.
I know. I find
in other words, if you didn't have money, you were.
During the tape, Reagan's face seems to fall apart.
Exposed. You had to take public transportation. If you're well off, your employer said, work from home. That's pretty minimal risk. Not a big, not a huge sacrifice. You might find like, I'm learning to perfect a recipe. That got to be a little tiresome.
There's only so many recipes in a given year,
Right. So
right.
I don't want to go off on a screed there, but
yeah.
And for the first 6, I started it like on May 1st last year, and I quit after about 2.5 months because it became a little draining to do it. But I was doing, I called it the 30-minute challenge, and I would play a song on acoustic guitar and sing it and put it live on Facebook every night at midnight.
Oh, wow.
They were all over the map. They were all covers. And the idea was I could not have played the song before. Like, I could know the song, like clearly know it well enough to want to play it, but I give myself 30 minutes to get the lyrics together, chord changes, and just like get the thrill of discovery. Sometimes that worked better than others. Sometimes I surprised myself, though, like something really good. Like, I wound up doing Last Trip to Tulsa, the very last song on Neil Young's first record. It's like this 9-minute Shaggy Dog's story. It is so dark.
Wow.
And I just felt myself like, it was great. The imaginary audience, like I'm speaking to you, like into the phone, and I felt myself getting lost in the music completely. And I went back and looked at it, and I went, hey, that was pretty good.
Wow.
You know?
Now, are they still up on your Facebook then?
Yeah, you can, if you go trawling around, they're in there somewhere.
Okay.
They're all from May and June of last year.
Okay.
So,
Speaking of trawling around, we mentioned this a little bit ago, and I wanted to check to see. You said something about the Fire King album.
Yeah.
Now, is the entire album out on Bandcamp?
Oh yeah.
It is.
There's two Fire King albums. There's an early one called Live a Little, Love a Little.
Okay.
It's 9 songs. It's sort of punky, and I wasn't that adept of a guitar player yet. I was just sort of like, well, I wanted to do something, you know?
Right.
So there's some good stuff on it. It pointed away, and that was just me and Michael Smith playing on that too. I played everything, and then the Double Trouble is more of a band by that point. I think the songs are stronger, and the performances are stronger, and it's recorded better, and it feels like a statement. And then I had a personnel shift in Fire King, and then I went on the road with Magnetic Fields for the better part of a year. COVID hit, and so Fire King has been back burned, but we're playing a gig later this month in downtown Malden, Massachusetts. So where our rehearsal studio is, and you know, it'll be nice to do it again.
Oh my gosh, yeah! To be able to get back.
I have a tremendous new rhythm section. So a fellow named John Sheeran, who I mentioned, who plays bass, and a great drummer named Jonathan Scrency, who I also play with, and both of them in a band called Gymnasium, which is us plus a really great guitar player named Charles Hansen and his wife and partner Melissa Gibbs, who plays keyboards.
Okay.
In Gymnasium, I'm purely the lead singer live, and we do Charles's songs.
Wow.
So, and he's doing a very ambitious recording project with a lot of different lead singers. I'm singing on 7 or 8 cuts. So I've been in the recording studio.
How cool.
Yeah, they're cool, angular. They're really surprising songs.
How soon will that be available for listeners?
Boy, I hope sooner than later, but the scope of the project is pretty big.
Okay.
So I don't know how Charles wants to release it. Like, he's got another behemoth on his hands where it might be like 21, 22 songs. I know that I had this goal in mind, like with Double Trouble, that I wanted to do a very old-fashioned double album. So we did. Like, it has a gatefold, and it's like, it's some effort was put into packaging and making it look good, and
it's everything. A real record.
Yeah, like you could roll joints on the inside of it. The idea.
You got to
a rolling tray.
Do that.
It's cross merchandising. Since you don't make any money from anything, sell this record as a rolling tray.
Yeah. No doubt, and then you got a soundtrack to boot.
Exactly. Cue that bad boy up. Fire up anyways.
I got you. Hey, I went and visited our local 420 today.
Cuts opening up on his face and eyes becoming bruised.